Hello, everybody. Welcome to Raising Vibrations and your assignment today. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at how to understand your ascendant. And this is part 2. And so if you haven't watched part 1, I encourage you to go and watch that video first before you look at this one. There'll be a lot more sense that you'll get when you're watching part 2. So in the description below is a link to go and watch part 1. And once you've done that, then come over to part 2, okay? All right, for those of you that have watched part 1 and that you've got a sense, okay, this is the most important word here. You've got a sense of what I'm talking about here when I'm referring to the ascendant as the sense of self that you have, okay, that is in a constant state of discovery, and that the nature of that sense of discovery allows it or becomes available to you as you live your life. Okay, so the ascendant reflecting this crucial developmental part of your self-image that over time becomes awake. Okay, and as Daniel Dar had put in his work, he talked about the bottom part of the chart being a reflection of what wants to come into consciousness, that wants to rise into awareness. So in order to grasp the context of this approach to understanding your ascendant from a spiritual perspective, and to understand that the ascendant is a reflection of a progressive awakening of your story on Earth, then when you understand the spiritual principles that are, or philosophy that is held in this teaching, it makes sense to you. And the thing that the philosophy here is that this is an aspect of your sense of identity that is in a constant state of awakening. And so a lot of the time, especially when we're younger, the context for what it is that the ascendant is trying to reveal to us is not available to us. And I think that as you get older in life and you're maturing and you've had many experiences in which you've become aware of what the meaning of your ascendant is reflected, you'll really start to see what this journey is about. And I think that something that's also very crucial to begin grasping and digesting and understanding, looking at your astrology chart from this perspective, is that it's not a mental thing where it's a personality approach. We're not looking at it in terms of knowledge based. We're observing our story on Earth and our existence on Earth from the place of the soul and what it is trying to accomplish through you as a human being. And so that's why this picture I chose specifically for this, because we're standing on a precipice, okay? And the person is standing on something that, inherently forms a sense of stability, right? A sense of groundedness. We're on something, and we're standing at a precipice. And what's in front of us is this sort of huge opening to beyond what we know, beyond what we understand, beyond what we can comprehend with our little human personalities. So the man in this picture, or the person in this picture, to me, as I use it, is a representation of the little personality that we have, that we call the ego, and the man-made kind of ideals and truths and projections and everything that is held within our sense of identity in its most smallest form, okay, encapsulated in this little bubble that we call awareness, is interfacing with something so much more bigger than it. And that the ascendant, to me, represents the meeting point between the sense of self at an ego level and the realization of totality, the realization of the universal existence, to put it in more sort of logical left brain ways, like the galaxy, right? You try to comprehend the magnitude of the sun, And in truth, even though we have a bunch of numbers that can say, oh, the sun is this hot or that hot, the brain and emotionally, I don't believe, can fully comprehend the context of it. And so it's outside of our reach. And in this sense, there is a meeting point. And this is really what I'm trying to put across with the expression here, is this realization that we have this meeting point, and each of us has a specific gateway, a specific door that is coded for us. And the sign that's there and the planet that's influencing that sign and conditioning that sign and the aspects that are being made to that planet reveals to us that doorway. And in that sense, you can really begin to feel a new way of exploring the meaning of your chart. This is primarily also what I'm wanting to put across, but also start to see that there's more to the astrology and your own sense of self than just simply looking at character definitions that are written on the internet, as an example. And that self-exploration is really the key to understanding it for yourself. And that astrologers can be guides through their intuitive capacity to point to the direction of where it is that you need to go. And in this case, this video is pointing very clearly to a distance where the unknown is what you're going to interface with, and that there is a specific way of interfacing with this unknown. Okay, so that's my little introduction to this video and setting the tone for it. Now, part two, what I want to do in this video is speak to you in terms of just, refreshing our sense of how the self is developing and in that way. And then I'm going to look at a bunch of charts for us. So we're going to look at some charts, and I'm going to help you take your own chart and then use this method to understand it in your own personal chart so that you can go ahead and explore it for yourself. But also if you want to practice with other people, right? Because I'm sure many of you that are into astrology or sort of playing around with it like to look at other people's charts and, and explore it there. Okay, so let's move over to my favorite little disc called the natural zodiac. And what you are looking at here, the frame or the reference that you're looking at here, is 12 astrological signs that on an earthly plane, as in terrestrial, okay, reflect the evolutionary progression from something that begins to the process of something that returns to the place from where it originated. So something that begins is an Aries energy, and something that returns to the place or the process that returns the thing to the original place that it was is Pisces. So if you look very carefully at the symbolism and the sign here, you can see that Aries is springing into new direction. From oneness, it springs into duality, okay? And then when you see the Pisces energy, duality merging so that it becomes one again. Pretty neat, isn't it? So this wheel reflects the evolutionary progression of energy from burst into new direction and return to oneness. And so in this sense, I use this chart to illustrate the way that our psychological ego develops itself and how we are naturally orientating towards reality. Okay? And so here with the Aries energy, okay, this is the cardinal sign. It's a cardinal sign. It reflects the initiation into a new direction. And it is the pathway or the gateway, as it were, to the deeper underlying dynamics that brought you into this life. And I've been doing this work for over 5 years now, which is very limited in comparison to people that have been doing it for 25 years in terms of EA and stuff like that. But through my deep, consistent, fanatical investigations, consistently, what shows up through millions of charts is that when you look at the ascendant and you look at the planets that's in on the ascendant or in the first house as an example, and you look at the context of what the rest of the chart is revealing, you'll see that there is a very profound like context of information that can be understood here. And so the rising sign in this sense, okay, or the first house or the ascendant, is reflecting where self-discovery is taking place. Okay. Now, in my video, I'll jump to that when I get to Libra. So here is a self-discovering process. Okay. And it initiates with a direction. It doesn't know what the direction is. There isn't a sense of self that is actually formed in this area. There is just direction. Okay. I've written self there because it is the orientation to, I don't know anything other than the present moment. So I'm going to follow this impulse. And as I follow this impulse, I go in that direction and, well, let's see what happens. Okay. As the energy moves to the Cancer archetype, which is a cardinal energy again, a sense of emotional connection becomes or forms itself to the experience. So the first day at a new job, okay, or the first time you do something for the first time ever, you're always filled with an underlying sense of anxiety. And that underlying sense of anxiety is because the psychological sense of security is not available. You don't know what to expect. So the underlying security is held within the Aries archetype. We're held within the rising sign in the first house. And as you begin to explore or experience moments in whatever it is that you're doing, you form psychological patterns of understanding. So after day 3, the anxiety around knowing yourself, knowing yourself or the orientation in the new job becomes a little bit less, because now you know where the toilets are. Now you know where that person works. Now you know where the photocopier is. Now you know where this is. And you can kind of get a sense of, oh, I'm not discovering this anymore. I'm kind of just going back to the place that I feel familiarity at. And so this is why in evolutionary astrology, Cancer, the moon, the 4th house all correlates to the ego structure, because it is the sense of familiarity or security pattern within our awareness that says, oh, I feel familiar here. I feel that this is a pattern that I can recognize, and so I'll consistently do it over a period of time, that then becomes my security. So this ongoing evolutionary development from self to security then becomes something where we then engage in something outside of ourselves, i.e. other people. And so in this context of meeting other people, we are taking our sense of development or curiosity or expression and our sense of security, i.e. identity, and we are then interfacing that with other people. So we're engaging in other people. And that persona becomes a way in which we sort of develop social understanding. Now you must take into consideration that other people's, or this over here, this is their Aries, okay? The Libra is reflecting other people's Aries and other people's Cancers, as you are reflecting your Aries and Cancer, i.e. your sense of self is interfacing with another person's sense of self. And so in that sense of self, we develop a kind of interaction. And what EA is proposing here through the works of Carl Jung, for instance, is that the sense of self that you have, i.e. this rising sign, is not actually the way that people know you in the first impressions. The other, i.e. the sign on the Libra side, as in if you're an Aquarius rising like myself and you've got Leo on the 7th house, your first impressions of me when you're actually interacting with me right in the beginning are not going to lead an Aquarius dynamic. I don't present myself to the world in an Aquarius way. Okay? And this is how it works for all of us, for instance. I mean, and there are many aspects to this equation. Okay, like for instance, oh, what happens if I have my South Node in the 7th house and it's conjunct Venus, and my rising sign is Libra, and so the planet that is influencing my rising sign, which is Venus, is in my 7th house. How does that show up? And so in that sense, you can start to begin to see threads of individuality exist. But at a core, the first impressions that people give us were always going to be the seventh house dynamic. It's the persona. Okay. All right. It doesn't mean that over time, somebody always sees you as a seventh house. Like you will, when you spend time with me, you'll start to see that Aquarius rising is very apparent in my personality. Because, and this is very important to understand, where the placement is of the planet that is ruling your ascendant individuates you. So you can have 5 people with an Aquarius rising and a Leo descendant, and one person has Aquarius in the 3rd, another person has a Uranus in the 3rd, another person has Uranus in the 9th, another person has Uranus in the 8th, and person A, who has Uranus in the 3rd, is going to be reflecting his rising sign in a more communication-oriented way. Whereas somebody with Uranus in the 9th is going to be more reflective of the Sagittarius energy as their rising sign. And person C, who has Uranus in the 8th house, is more likely going to reflect the Aquarius rising through the lens of a Uranus in the 8th house dynamic. So what is beautiful about this illustration is that even though we all have an Aquarius rising in this example, depending on where that Uranus is sitting in the chart will reflect an individuation. And in that sense, you see the beauty of our paths being so different. You know, there is no such thing as one size fits all. Yeah? Okay. So as we kind of meet the other, we develop the other, we integrate with the other, we start to digest, we learn from other people as an example, and we digest this. And then we hit the Capricorn part, which is a cardinal energy. All 4 of these are cardinal energies. You start to see that we develop a boundary. And this boundary is where our sense of self meets the unknown. So anything outside what it is that we know, okay, is unknown. And whatever it is that's unknown over there is something that we can't hold in our awareness. And so this is where the dynamic of like control in relationships takes place, or protection mechanisms in our psyche takes place, because we draw boundaries around things that we can comprehend and understand, and outside of that we can't own, and this is where projection comes in. So Capricorn is the form, or it is the line that reveals to us where our sense of self or emotional understanding is and how it interfaces with the thing that we don't understand or can't comprehend because it's outside, it's raw material. Okay, so to give you a very clear example, you can have somebody that has, let's just take a trauma example, okay, and they've had a traumatic experience, and so they're unable to, let's say they had a traumatic experience at the age of 9. They get to the age of 30 and they start noticing that this trauma experience is affecting the way that relationships are working for them. And because there is no context for why that is happening until therapy takes place or until moments of realization take place, notice that word, moments of realization, okay, which is essentially what you would do through therapy as an example, you would reintegrate the trauma back into yourself. So what we're seeing here is that somebody that is unable to understand the trauma that happened at the age of 9 will progressively not know that this is affecting their life until events or circumstances bring that awareness into their self. And then when they bring that awareness into their self, then they're able to hold onto it or own it. And so in this sense, we're able to take responsibility for our lives. And that is ultimately what this is really trying to reveal here, is that the ongoing progression of our awareness and the development of awareness leads us to taking more responsibility for our lives, because we're able to own more of the dark material or raw material that is sitting outside the boundary of what it is that we don't know. Does that make sense? And this is the purpose of this video, again, is to kind of encourage us to realize that we can bring more value to our lives and to others by understanding the deeper psychological and emotional nature of ourselves. And so this is the framework for how that gets developed. Okay. So understanding your ascendant is a doorway into this developing self. Okay. So watch this 100 times if you need to in terms of digestion. Okay. This little line over here, which is attachment, the Scorpio part, is the nature or the reason as to why we, on one level, feel the anxiety of separation from something that we know and something that is new. It is also the reason as to why the self or the rising sign energy will primarily be a place where we will feel uncomfortable expressing. And this is simply because we don't feel comfortable in that place. It's unknown to us. This is the key here. So the 7th house becomes an aspect of what we will show to others because that is what we feel comfortable with. And this inconjunct, which is a 150-degree angle between Aries and Scorpio, reveals freedom and discovery and attachment and security. Attachment and security on one level provides a sense of familiarity, freedom and expression and new direction reveals let go of security. Okay? And so it's this angle here that is actually the reason as to why, in evolutionary astrology at least, that evolution itself is a progressive experience of meeting things that you're not aware of consistently to awaken what it is that is inherent within your journey. Okay. This is the psychological framework for how this journey takes place. So how do I apply this to a natal chart is the question. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's try this out. Okay, so there's two things that I want to make very clear. One, evolutionary astrology looks at the sign, the planet, and the house as a reflection of the same archetype, meaning that when you're looking at the chart, we're always looking at what is called repeating themes. It is probably one of the most powerful pieces of wisdom that I can offer you when you're looking at your chart is when you start looking at the chart and you start picking up repeating themes or repetitive themes. It's truly amazing. Okay, so let's start, right? This person has a rising sign Leo. This is just random charts that I picked up, right? This person has a rising sign Leo, okay? So we know that the self-discovery mechanism in this person's story is about discovering their sun sign. Why is it their sun sign? Because sun is the planet that is influencing the rising sign here. And there are two things that are taking place. One, you can see that the south node is actually in this chart, as in the south node is in Leo. So we already know that there's an aspect of this person that is coming into the story that has an orientation to the Leo archetype already. It's like there's a natural orientation towards it in this chart. Okay, if you looked at it from an evolutionary astrology perspective, you would see that there is something here that this soul is going to relive around the nature of the Leo energy. Okay, and it's very clear to me why this would be taking place, and I'll show you why now. Now let's look at the sun. Where's the sun? The next step in this process is to look at the sun. Why? Because it's the sun that's ruling Leo. And the sun is in the 5th house of the astrology chart. The sun is in the 5th house of the astrology chart. The 5th house of the astrology chart, Leo and the sun, from EA's perspective, is all the same archetype. So we already have a repeating theme here of creativity and Leo energy in this placement. And you've got 1, 2, 3 planets in the 5th house. So this speaks to a story about self-creation. And that's the purpose here. That's the purpose. That's all we want to do. There's nothing more complex about this. It's, okay. All right. So creativity and self-actualization and being recognized and purpose and stuff, these are core themes in your life. And if the person's in front of you, or if it's you, you're going to be like, yeah, I resonate with this deeply. And then you go and explore. What does that mean for you? You know, it's done. If you want to go deeper into the chart in terms of analysis, you can do that. But the primary function of this video is to point to this very simple technique of looking at the rising sign as a gateway into understanding the deeper aspects of the soul. So yeah, you have this 5th house energy. There's the the planet is ruling the Leo archetype, and the sun is actually ruling the south node as well. Okay. If you have a look at the chart, this person has things called squares to the nodes. So here's the 25-degree Aquarius, here's the 25-degree Leo, and there is Jupiter sitting at 24-degree Scorpio. Okay? Jupiter is square the nodes of this person, meaning that there is an aspect, a red line, 90-degree aspect there. Okay? So immediately, the nodes reflect the nature of experiences, so we're involving time. There is a planet that's squaring the nodes, indicating and suggesting that this soul has already experienced the south node and the north node. There are aspects of their reality in which they're aware of their north node dynamics and have probably actualized it, meaning that there's something here to recover. There's something here to fully integrate. And when you see a square to the node like that, to me, it just goes, oh, of course, Leo rising, south node in the first house. Here you have the sun in the fifth house here. And then the planet that's actually influencing the sun is Jupiter. The sun is in Sagittarius. The planet that influences Sagittarius is Jupiter. And that's where you can see that there's a repetitive theme in this chart of trying to resolve something around the past. So they're reworking this Leo energy in a completely new way. Okay. Let's do this chart over here. Okay, here you've got a Capricorn rising. Lo and behold, North Node in the first house, Sun in the first house, Chiron in the first house, and you've got all of these Capricorn energies sitting here. There you have Saturn in the 10th house. Saturn's in its own house. Okay, it's actually squaring Pluto. So there's an indication of evolutionary dynamics taking place between Pluto and Saturn. And there's a lot of energy here. The planet that is influencing this Capricorn rising is Saturn, as I mentioned, and that's squaring Pluto. You can see here deeply that there's an aspect of this Pluto-Saturn that's trying to be resolved through the lens of this first house. Okay, so the question is, well, what does my rising sign mean? Well, firstly, your North Node is there. Your North Node's actually being squared by Mars. Here's another squares to the nodes thing again. Okay, you're being squared by Mars, so you're resolving something around your Mars energy, very apparent and clear. Mars is in the sign of what? In the sign of Aries. Aries, Mars, first house, same dynamic, repeating theme. Oh, Mars is in the third. Mercury in the first. Mars, Aries energy, first house energy, third house, Mercury, same thing. So repetitive themes pointing to specific aspects of evolution in the chart. So in this case, you would say the rising sign is trying to reveal what this unresolved Mars is about, and also it's also trying to reveal the Saturn square Pluto dynamic in the person's life. Now, from this point, you can begin to now start looking at what that actually means in the person. How did it play out? How was the psyche shaped regarding these symbols? The astrology has already done the work. We've opened up the portal. Let's go and explore. Let's try another chart. Okay. So here we have an Aquarius rising, and the planet that's influencing Aquarius is Uranus. And Uranus is sitting here in the 7th house in Pluto, conjunct Pluto, right? So we can see here that there's something deeply about the Uranian-Pluto dynamic that's trying to be resolved. Uranus is squaring Mars over there. Pluto is also squaring Mars, so there's a lot of aspects being made, or should I say in this case, there are aspects being made to Mars and to Uranus, so there's something to be worked over there, okay? And we can see that there are two aspects in this chart as well. We've got Chiron in the first house, and we have Saturn also in the first house. So I would say that this is an interesting dynamic where this energy points to some sort of deconditioning or the necessity for liberation or breaking free, Aquarius, to change the patterns, or some trauma around authority, and breaking free from patterns regarding relationship dynamics. Okay, very, very simple. Okay, so we open the portal. The portal says we're looking for what unresolved material around Saturn in the Aquarius and relationship dynamics are at play, right? You can see here that this south node is actually in the 11th house of the chart, which is an Aquarius house. So, and the planet that's actually influencing the south node is Saturn. So we can see that the soul's already, tried to work on this kind of liberation aspect. This is all about liberation. This is all about changing the pattern, not following the same process consistently. A lot of energy here that's reflecting an ongoing process of breaking free and changing the pattern and not following the same script as before. So one more time, the rising sign is pointing to Uranus. Uranus is in the 7th conjunct Pluto. It's over here. It's about relationships. What is it about relationships specifically? Well, it seems like it has to do with a need for breaking free from patterns of relationships that are rooted in some sort of oppression, Capricorn energy, maybe defining themselves in groups and friendships in a different way, and trying to break free from the constraints of maybe the belief systems of different types of cultural conditioning, right? Gender roles, as it were. That would be what we would be looking at here. And then, of course, when the portal opens, there's a resonance inside there. Oh, yeah, I feel like this. I've always wanted to dye my hair blue, but mom never ever allowed me to do that because that's not what girls do, as an example. Does that make sense? Okay. So I hope that this video, all right, has provided you with information in terms of seeing how to look at your own chart and to look around where the rising sign is and to see the repeating themes, to give you insights into understanding that the way that we develop our psychological nature comes through an initiation into a new direction that then progressively becomes something that we feel familiar to, and then we develop a sense of self-connection through familiarity. We then engage that with other people, and through our interactions, we start to develop a sense of, oh, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. And so that then defines our boundary. And then that sense of self then interacts with the deeper underlying message that is held within the chart. And that, in these 3 examples that I've showed you, reveals to us that what we're here essentially doing is becoming more awake to the things that are just outside the boundary of what it is that we know. Okay? All right, my friends, thanks very much for listening to this video. If you would like me to analyze your own personal birth chart, then you can check the links in the description below if this gave you something of value and you would like my personal professional expertise to help you with that and understand these things. I'm available 24/7. I'm at my desk. I'm doing the work over here. So if you would like that, in the description below is a link to go check that out. Other than that, see you in the next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.